fresh off Star Wars Day on May the 4th, let's talk some Star Wars.
Oh, muy, I love you!
How's it going, everyone? Thank you for tuning in to another episode here at Figure Out Films. I'm your host, as always, Chris, and today I love to celebrate Star Wars with you. I know it's just a day past the 4th, may the 4th be with you, but it's never a bad time to talk about Star Wars, unless maybe you hate the sequel trilogy. However, today, it's been about 3-4 years since I last did a ranking of my Star Wars films. With age comes maybe more wisdom, and I'm gonna go ahead and rank today all 11 Star Wars movies. I'm not going to include any of the Star Wars shows or limited series like the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. Honestly, that's just a lot of work, and then also because they're not technically movies, they're event series. But also they probably wouldn't be very high on this list to begin with. A little bit about me with Star Wars. I've grown up watching Star Wars all my life. I think it's one of the best sci-fi movies ever. I love all of the Star Wars. Any Star Wars is good Star Wars for me because I remember that weird dark time where I grew up in the early 2000s that there wasn't any Star Wars coming out. I mean, we had like the animated Clone Wars show, but between 2 and 3, it felt like forever. And then also from 3 to 7, there was no Star Wars really, except the Clone Wars show. So I always have a very close spot in my heart for Star Wars, and it being May the 4th, and it is the 25th anniversary of the Phantom Menace, which you can go see now in theaters. Has me feeling nostalgic because that was the first Star Wars movie I ever saw, and then after that was the original trilogy, of course. So I want to go ahead and rank all the Star Wars movies, and again, I gotta preface this. I grew up in the dark times of the sequel trilogy releases, and I don't mean the movies themselves, I mean the fandom. It's very divisive, very aggressive, and I want all the smoke, obviously, because I know I'll be cooked at the end of this list, but I do want to specify that this is my personal opinion. I love Star Wars, as you can see with my hot toys in the back, and I have all the films as well here with me to show off. I just love Star Wars. I love talking about Star Wars. If you want to hear some of my deeper thoughts, check out my podcast, Inside the Sequel, with my buddy Daniel from the Cobwebs channel, where we did take a deeper dive into the sequel and the original trilogy, or was it the prequel trilogy, sorry, of Star Wars. So you can listen to that on Spotify or iTunes. But other than that, let's go ahead and go into Star Wars ranking. Now, I do want to preface that I'm going to go ahead and start, I think, from my ranking of, there's 11 of them. I want to go from the bottom all the way to number 1 instead of going from in descending order. So let's go ahead and start with my least favorite Star Wars movie. And by no means, like, I don't hate it or anything. I don't dislike it. I love all these movies. That's going to be in this. This is my star. I don't have the 4Ks of the original 6, but I do have this. But it is going to be Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. Now, Attack of the Clones, I remember seeing it as a kid. I remember being excited to see it. I think Count Dooku and Jango Fett had this huge impact on me as a kid because I thought Jango Fett was the coolest. I liked Jango Fett more than Boba Fett because he was so cool. I thought the clones were really cool. Seeing all the Jedi and Geonosis fighting was awesome. It was just peak for me. I also was too young and naive to understand the problematic relationship of Padme and Anakin in this movie. But as an adult, I do love, hearing that whole thing about Anakin saying people should be forced to vote, and like, of course, his complaints of the sand. And my favorite, most attractive thing he's ever done is kill the Tusken Raiders and tell Padme about it. I still like this movie. I think there's a lot. I think there's a lot in this movie for Attack of the Clones. I think there is a lot of complicated. This is a very political movie. It feels like a political thriller more than a sci-fi movie at some points, with Obi-Wan doing his investigating and trying to figure out who the clones were and who's working behind the shadows. It's a little too long, and there's a little too much talking going on. There's not as much action, I feel like. I do think that there is some great set pieces in this, especially the chase scene in Coruscant. I think the Geonosis battles, like I said, was great. Even the Jango versus Kenobi fight's really cool. And you get Dax Diner, which is iconic as hell. So you get that. But yeah, I have to start with Attack of the Clones being my least favorite from the Star Wars movies. Coming in next, I remember being so hyped for this movie. I was standing in lines. I even switched out my tickets to go to an earlier showing. Star Wars Mania was awesome at this time. It was a great time to be a fan. But this movie, I still can't get it higher on my list, is no matter how hard I try and how often I watch it. That is episode 7, The Force Awakens. Now, as cool as this steelbook is, it has great highs, and to me, it's just a very average movie after those highs. I think it's a very safe Star Wars movie. There's not a lot of risks taken. There aren't a lot of iconic things that happen. I think the most iconic thing is Rey force grabbing the lightsaber from Finn when he gets slashed. The Kylo fight with her is cool. It's not the coolest thing in Star Wars, but it is still really cool. Obviously, I think the best scene in this whole movie is when Han and Chewie come back onto the Millennium Falcon and say we're back, or we're home. That's great. I love that. That's probably the best shot in the whole movie. Maybe Chewie hugging Leia after seeing her. I haven't seen her for a long time. I love seeing Poe Dameron. I think the opening's very cool. I think Finn is really strong in this movie. But again, it just feels like a lesser episode 4, and I'd rather just watch 4 in some points. I think this is such a nostalgic trip, but I think as a retrospective of this movie, it doesn't fit as well. That's the thing about the sequel trilogy. They all kind of stand on their own because there's such different types of subgenre of Star Wars. But this one just feels like almost like try to make a remake of the original episode 4, and I don't know. It's just like you just watch 4 then, because they're all closely together and they're so accessible. I don't know. I can't really explain it. It's just a little hard for me. This is even my favorite Kylo. This isn't my favorite Kylo impression. I like him in the later movies. There's just some things like I no matter how hard I try, I still can't get episode 7 up. Next on the list, I think, again, a controversial pick. I remember being there. I was there for this movie. I thought it was cool then, and then I came off of it, and now Star Wars is like economics. It goes up, and then eventually has to come down, and then we get equilibrium, and then vice versa. But that's how it is with the prequel trilogy, and it's gonna happen with the sequel trilogy, is where these prequel movies were bashed and discredited and not, very well loved. Now this movie's, I think, considered one of the best for a lot of people, especially Gen Z. I think people born after this movie, and I think fans who didn't like it before have came around to it. But putting it in is your number one favorite or being your favorite ever, I think wild. I respect that courage. I couldn't be me. But that's gonna be episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. When it comes to merchandise, I think Revenge of the Sith is the best. I think that Star Wars had its peak Star Wars merchandise with Revenge of the Sith. You got, because it kind of launched those little chibi storm chaser kind of figures. You got the actual movie figures where you have Anakin's legs and he would have a slashing effect. You got a lot of great games, the Star Wars Battlefront games, the Revenge of the Sith movie game, which was great. I think Star Wars just lifted off because of Revenge of the Sith, and it's carried on for this long. So I got to give it so much credit for that. Again, a lot of iconic stuff here. It's similar though to Attack of the Clones. It's a little long, but I understand it has to be. The actual turn of Anakin, I feel isn't as high as people think it is. I think the score is the strongest thing in this movie, along with the lightsaber sequences. I wish they spent more time with some of the villains like General Grievous as well, Dooku. I feel like we didn't get very much time with Darth Tyrannus, aka Dooku, in episode 2 or 3. And he's killed pretty, early on. I understand why, and if you watch Clone Wars, I understand that. But if you're only watching them from strictly the movies, it just doesn't work. Also, the Palpatine thing, how obvious can it be that Palpatine is evil? It's so brooming with evil. Even Yoda has suspicions in episode 2 when he's looking at the Chancellor. And it just, so much more so then. I think it's a little over dramatic and melodramatic with Order 66, with the argument with Padme and Anakin. Again, if you're not as hard on the relationship, I guess it doesn't feel as good to see, the turn against her. She literally is losing the will to live. Sounds great, execution-wise, meh. I still like it, though. Don't get me wrong. I still love playing the game. I love watching this movie. The march on the Jedi Temple is great. I love the memes that came from this. But yeah, I just can't put it any higher. I think there's better Star Wars to spend your time with. All right, next, again, I think a movie that gets way overhated. It's funny, the movie that I previously put, I think I put it at the number 9 slot, is actually, I think, too loved, and then this movie is too hated. That is Episode 9, Star Wars: Rise of Skywalker. I know, don't cook me in the comments just yet, but Rise of Skywalker, honestly, I think it had the unbearable unbearable weight of, you know, carrying this franchise and creating the ultimate ending. It had to deal with the outlash from the previous movie with Last Jedi, and it just, the expectations were insurmountable for this movie to deliver everything for people. But we still got a good Star Wars movie. I think this movie is nitpicked to hell. I really do feel like it. I know it's trying to do the Avengers Endgame with like the ships and stuff, but like honestly, it's the first time in the Star Wars universe where the universe does come together to defeat evil, besides relying on a corrupt government in the Democratic Senate, with the Jedi Order, even with the New Alliance Order. This is the first time the universe has actually come together to defeat evil, which is great. It's not just putting the shoulders on heroes. It's actually a universe coming together to understand that this evil needs to end. I love the lightsaber fights between our stars of Kylo and Rey. I think they're the best here. The move from Kylo to Ben is beautiful, I think, in this movie. Very well portrayed by Adam Driver. I feel like you get a really good arc ending to Finn with this as well. I do have some issues with it, but honestly, this is a guilty pleasure. This is a popcorn movie, man. I mean, if you watch this, put it in the background, you're going to see something on the screen you like, and you're going to hear dialogue that's great. I think some people take Star Wars maybe almost too serious, and I think this is the movie that they like to hate on the most because of that. I think it's a good time. I think it's really good. I like the ending against Palpatine as well. You get the Knights of Ren. Chewie dying, you know, like, I mean, when I saw it in theaters, I was crying. I was like, what? No way. But yeah, gotta give it to Rise of Skywalker. And I got it in this sweet 4K. Shout out Babu Frick as well. The man's carries. Love that movie. Coming in at the number 7 slot, I have Rogue One. Again, a Star Wars story. I like these Star Wars stories movies. Rogue One, I didn't like when it first came out. I was very meh about it. Man, has it grown on me. This is probably the best looking Star Wars movie in terms of direction, location shots. Just every location scene in this movie just looks great. I mean, I need the 4K for this movie. It just shot so visually well. I love seeing the Empire being portrayed as this like huge mammoth of evil that's unstoppable. I really do feel it. And you get to see the inner dichotomy of like the military soldiers and generals with a very young Darth Vader. I love seeing the rebels and the rebellion being very young and, you know, trying to do well, but, you know, crossing that line of, is it worth, you know, doing some actions like assassinations and things like that. Cassian Andor is a great portrayal by Diego Luna in here. Honestly, this movie could also get boiled down to Ben Mendelsohn's worst day at work, you know, because as director critic, it just seems like he's constantly having his day ruined in some way. The Grand Moff Tarkin stuff, honestly, I really like. Kind of questionable with the CGI usage, but I still really enjoy it. I think that the Vader scene is so cool at the end. I just really like this movie. It's grown on me, honestly, but it will for always be the best looking Star Wars movie. The locations are just so good. It feels like a true grand scale of like, if they lose here, it's wraps. So they have to try and survive. I love feeling that. Felicia Jones in this, as well as Jyn Erso. She's so awesome as a protagonist in this movie. Yeah, I'm excited for Cassian or season 2 and trying to tie it to this movie. So I got Rogue One there. Coming in at number 6, controversial. I feel like this list is already, I'm already getting roasted. I can hear the typing on the keyboards, but that is Episode 4, A New Hope. Now, the thing with A New Hope, it's classic, it's iconic, well-paced. Love seeing Alec Guinness as a Ben Kenobi in this. You know, early Harrison Ford as Han Solo. I get it. It's cool. I like seeing a young Luke. It's almost a little too simplistic at times, though, honestly. I think that's the thing for me. I feel like that movie is constantly in my head, like, just like the entire screenplay is just in my head. I can think about any time the order of the scenes and the quotes. Maybe that's a good thing, you know. Maybe it's so iconic it's embedded in my brain memory. But like I feel like the movie's constantly being played in my head, and then it's like I don't feel like I need to watch it. I feel like I already know it. You know, it's good. You know, it's great. You know, shot the franchise up to where it is. But I don't know. It's just not my favorite. You know, I think I respect it. I still love it. Don't get me wrong. I think it's great. I still wish though you know, when people talk about these despecialized editions, I think episode 4 is the only one you really need. I want to see the stuff with Luke and Biggs talking. I feel like that's kind of important. I like to see the Wolfman in the cantina scene. I mean, yeah, this is more the kids version of Star Wars. Like, I think like when we think like Star Wars is kids stuff, which isn't bad. I love kids movies and such too. I think like episode 4 is that one for me. But yeah, I think Grand Moff Tarkin as the villain in this movie is great. I think the problem with episode 4 is that it's not even its own fault. It gets spoofed so much, like Spaceballs, Thumb Wars, you know, you get all this other crap. I think it kind of ruins the original movie for me a little bit, because I think about those and how they're embedded in pop culture, and I'm just kind of like, meh, like, you know, I feel like I've seen it so many different versions of it already, you know, in some ways. Even the Star Wars Family Guy special, for God's sake. Yeah, you know, episode 4 is there. Still great, though. Still good. Coming in just at the top 5. And it's kind of come down because one came up, but this is still an amazing Star Wars movie. And of course, it's a Star Wars story. Solo, a Star Wars story. Eldon Aldrich got the worst hand dealt to him with Star Wars because this movie wanted to compete with the MCU. I think it kind of ruined his stardom a little bit and kind of hurt this movie. And I think this movie's finally getting its flowers. I think people are finally coming around to this movie and realizing how great it is. I think at one point this was my number 3 or 4, but that's only because another movie came up, surprisingly, that this one would have to come down. But just like Rogue One, seeing like how a rebellion can start within someone and how you can make a small change that has large impacts, that's Solo, man. I love Harrison Ford as Solo, don't get me wrong, but I think Eldon does a great job portraying him. I just love Woody Harrelson's portrayal as well. Lando Calrissian in this. It's just a star-studded cast. You get an awesome cameo of a beloved character in this movie. There's no force. There's no lightsabers or anything like that. It's just a down-to-earth Star Wars movie in some ways. It's kind of like what The Mandalorian did when it came out, you know, before like you see Ahsoka and all this other stuff. Which isn't a bad thing. Once again, it's not bad. I'm not complaining, but I'm just saying it is kind of nice to see people in this universe trying to make changes without relying on the Force or a lightsaber. I mean, I really just, I enjoy that. And I think Han Solo does too. And I think Solo does a great job of showing that. Seeing the Castle Run happen was something I never thought I needed to see, but I'm so happy I get to see it whenever I want. And on 4K too. But yeah, this is just a great movie. And I think the Crimson Dawn Syndicate is such a cool thing. I need more movies centered around that. So yeah, I gotta give Solo top 5, number 5. Coming in next at number 4, this is the movie that shot up more than I thought it actually would. Pretty rewatchable for me, probably for nostalgia. But yeah, that is gonna be Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And I know I'm crazy. I can't believe I'm saying this. I love The Phantom Menace. I love pod racing. That's my thing. I love pod racing. I love Qui-Gon Jinn. I love Darth Maul. I love the politics played in this. I think 2 got it wrong because 1 just did it so well. I just love how this movie's shot. It's shot on film. It's not as digital as like 2 and 3, and that might be the biggest thing too. This still feels like it's in the realm of 4, 5, and 6. I just love the way it's shot. I love Naboo. I don't think the CGI is too over the top. And you can, you know, I think this one has like the CGI Yoda, but seeing the puppet Yoda is still embedded in my head. I do have it on VHS. You know, Watto, Sebulba, Tatooine, Queen Amidala, Padme, the swap, Captain Panalka, young Ewan McGregor is Obi-Wan with the Jedi braid. It's just, this movie is like, this is Star Wars for me. I love Episode 1 so much. I love, Jar Jar Binks I love too. Honestly, Liam Neeson carries so well this movie. This character of Qui-Gon Jinn is just so, my eyes get glued on the screen when he's there. I just love Qui-Gon. And you get to see early, glimpses of the Jedi Council as well. There's a lot of deep internal issues that I think Lucas does a great job of showing between Qui-Gon, the Jedi, the political side of it, trying to figure out if Anakin is actually the chosen one and if he, should be trained or not. I love that stuff. It feels like brewing up to the point of explosion that we get in 2 and 3. I think 1 does a great job of kind of building that suspense and Anakin becomes Darth Vader, but as a kid, it might not have happened. And I like to see that stuff unfold. This is like a good mix of that kids, accessibility to kids for Star Wars and also, the satisfaction of being an adult fan of Star Wars as well. The episode 1 at number 4. Coming in at number 3. God, I saw this movie so much in theaters. Love this movie. Star Wars: The Last Jedi. I know. People do not like this movie. I think people actually are coming around to it because they hate Rise of Skywalker that much more. A soul for a soul, you might say. Man, I love The Last Jedi. Rian Johnson, I think, honestly, really saved the direction of Star Wars with this movie. I think it's a breath of fresh air. It's such a very different and unique narrative of Star Wars. It doesn't follow those beats, I feel like, that most of the movies do have in some respects. It just to kind of stand on its own. I think Mark Hamill's his strongest performance maybe in this. Kylo Ren, Adam Driver just kills it in this movie. I love the relationship with him and Rey, being the only Force users in here. Again, I like seeing Finn have his independence in this movie. I really do. It has such a great opening. In this impending danger of they're eventually going to die. The Battle of Crete, people complain about that's so unrealistic and things like that. I think it's just it just perfectly portrays and does the payoff well with Rise of Skywalker, where nobody came and they were fighting literally to the end, until some mythical legend came and actually saved them in Luke. And even not even on his own accord, just showing his Force prowess. Just the man who's finally coming back to who he used to be. I love that with Luke in this movie. And then you see in Rise of Skywalker when everyone does finally come to help save the universe. I love that with Rian Johnson kind of laying the foundation for that here. I also always get teary-eyed when Kylo and Luke are fighting on Crete, and Kylo tells him, I've killed the last Jedi. And then he almost tears up and says, how he's wrong. And I won't be the last Jedi. And you see Rey lifting up the Force rocks to save literally the Resistance. When Rey, which I think has her best look. I think her costume in this is the best. I don't like Rise of Skywalker. I don't like The Force Awakens. I think this is her best look in the franchise. I love her fighting with Kylo against the Royal Guards, basically, in this movie in the throne room, showing that Snoke isn't who he is. Love that stuff. The Hux and Kylo relationship, how it's squandered, is great. The hierarchy of power in the First Order, I think, is great in this movie. I really just like The Last Jedi, honestly. And Porgs as well. All right, and then at number 2, I do have Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back. It's coming very close. It's neck and neck at this point now. It used to be a little bit more clear for me, but I'm almost seeing the way. I love Empire Strikes Back so much. I love seeing Luke in his X-Wing gear. It's so cool. The Dagobah stuff. I love the adventure that breaks into the Han and Leia team, and then just Luke doing his Jedi stuff. I love that split. But mostly I love the Empire in this movie. I mean, Darth Vader is at the forefront of this movie with his lieutenants and governors. I just really does feel like the Empire is unstoppable in this movie, and they really are throughout the entire movie. First introduction to Boba Fett and the bounty hunters. This movie's just so well paced. It's just perfect, right? And then at number 1, obviously, is Return of the Jedi for me. I love Luke in the black Jedi robes with the green lightsaber. It's so cool. I love the opening at the Jabba's palace. I do also love the ending on the Battle of the Death Star. I love, honestly, the trench run in that and the starship fights on that, along with the Vader stuff, of course, fighting Luke. But the Endor stuff is slowly getting a little bit more annoying to me than I thought it would. But I still enjoy it, don't get me wrong. It does feel like a great ending to this trilogy. When you see that everyone in the universe celebrating and things like that, I enjoy it. I just love 6 so much. I watched it so much as a kid. I just can't stop, loving it. So yeah, at number 1, I do have Return of the Jedi. Hopefully you could hang on and stick through the entire ranking. I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. I'd also really love to see what your ranking of Star Wars is as well. What did I miss out? What are we different on? Don't roast me too much down in the comments, please. Like I said, I still love all Star Wars, don't get me wrong, and I love the shows as well. So, but thank you all for tuning in to another episode here at Figure Out Films. If you'd like to see what I'm doing in terms of physical media and collecting, don't forget to check out the Instagram page at Figure Out Films. If you missed our last video, don't forget to check out our channel below. We're putting out great stuff right now. If you'd like to see these rankings or want to see a top 10 of some kind of certain movies or genre, comment down below what you like to see. I'm always taking suggestions. I'm thinking we might do a Scream ranking in our next video, so stick around for that. But yeah, thank you all for tuning in to another episode here at Figure Out Films. My name's Chris, as always, and remember, if you are not watching Star Wars, or if you don't love Star Wars, do you really care about cinema? Other than that, I'll see you next time.